Thank you, Mr. President. We are not safer when we silence dissent. We are not stronger when we deport voices of conscience. We are not America if we punish people for daring to speak their truth. Colleagues, I rise today because of what is happening in our country. To legal immigrants, to student activists, to people who dare to believe that America stood for freedom is nothing short of a national disgrace. Let me say this plainly. The Trump administration is using our immigration system as a weapon against political dissent. They are targeting green card holders, visa holders, international students, not because they've broken the law, but because they dared to speak up, because they marched, because they held signs, and because they believed in free speech. Let me ask you this. Since when did becoming an activist become grounds for deportation? Since when did holding a different opinion than Marco Rubio or Donald Trump mean that you don't belong in this country? And I'll tell you something personal that keeps me up at night. I've been out there too. I've organized protests. I've spoken out. I've challenged those in power loudly and publicly. And the only thing that's protecting me from being thrown in a detention center or being shipped off to Guantanamo Bay is the fact that I was born on this soil. My citizenship is the thin line standing between me and the same kind of retaliatory crackdown we are seeing right now. We've seen a Columbia graduate student stripped of his green card and threatened with deportation because he joined a protest. A Brown University professor, a doctor, detained and deported because of photos on her phone. A Georgetown researcher was detained without charges over his views and his wife's Palestinian heritage. A Turkish doctoral student was just locked up without charges. And these are not isolated mistakes, these are intentional messages. And the message is this: if you challenge us, we will come for you. That should terrify every single American. Because this isn't just about immigrants. This is about the erosion of our rights. This is about free speech, and this is about due process. And this is about the fact that the people this country once welcomed as neighbors, scholars, workers, and classmates are now being treated like enemies simply for caring for justice. If they can do it to a permanent resident today, they can do it to a citizen tomorrow. If they can arrest someone for carrying a protest sign, they can arrest you for wearing a t-shirt. This is not how a democracy behaves. This is how authoritarian regimes operate. Now, some of my colleagues will say, well, coming to America is a privilege, not a right. To them, I say, being an American means nothing if we abandon the values that define us. Free speech is not a privilege. It is a right. Peaceful protest is not terrorism. It is patriotism. And being an activist doesn't make you a threat. It makes you courageous. Let me remind you, some of the greatest changes in our nation's history, civil rights, women's suffrage, labor protections, came from people who were told to sit down and shut up. And thank God they didn't. Because the moment we start punishing people for demanding better, we lose what makes America worth fighting for in the first place. To every student watching this, whether you're a student at UGA, Georgia State, Gwinnett Tech, or Georgia Tech, I see you, I support you, and I will not let this government bully you into silence. And to the Trump administration, if you think you can terrify our students into silence, if you think you can deport away dissent, you don't know a darn thing about the spirit of this country, because we were built by the bold. We were shaped by the brave, and we will not be broken by cowardice in a suit and tie. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the belt.